Bronze Age period, the island of Crete was home to the ancient Minoan Civilization, whose history was symbolized by the city of Knossos. The complex of the Knossos Palace, crowned by the Palace of Minos, was a major center on the island, as well as a complex organization with administrative and religious purposes. Built around 1900 BC, the Palace of Minos went through 5 centuries of constant expansion and renovation before its eventual fall around the end of the 2nd millennium BC. Early excavation work done by Minos Kalokerinos in 1877 marked the start of the pursuit to discover Knossos history. However, Arthur Evans was the one who uncovered most of the palace during his massive excavations in 1900, introducing the world to famous artifacts like the figurines of snake goddesses and the bull leaping fresco. Arthur Evans has made an incredible contribution towards revealing the history of Minoan civilization, but his reconstruction techniques have led to controversy among historians. The Neolithic culture of Crete gave rise to the Minoan civilization, which flourished from around 3100 BC. The Minoans, with their unique writing system, art and architecture, have been credited as the first civilization in Europe. Their unique society and culture included extensive palatial buildings resembling those at Knossos and Phaestus, decorated with murals that portrayed scenes from their culture. The creative spirit of the civilization was reflected in the quality of Minoan art. Through broad trade networks, the Minoan influence spread far beyond Crete to the Eastern Mediterranean, Egypt, Italy, Anatolia, and the Levant. Their highly developed writing systems are still quite mysterious and difficult to fully understand. The Minoan civilization faded into secrecy following the collapse of the Late Bronze Age, but it was rediscovered in the early 20th century. When Arthur Evans first used the term Minoan, interest in this ancient culture grew once more. The 1952 decipherment of Linear B by Michael Ventris advanced our knowledge by revealing important details regarding Minoan administration and economics. However, Linear B is the only Aegean script from the Bronze Age that has been decoded. The other scripts like Cypro-Minoan and Cretan hieroglyphics are still basically unreadable. As we explore the myths, culture and history that make up this remarkable archaeological site, we also explored Knossos and the people that used to live there a long time ago. During the pre-pottery Neolithic period, approximately 7000 BC, Knossos emerged as the earliest known settlement in Crete. During its early years, Knossos was a tiny village with a small number of people. These prehistoric people farmed and raised animals, and during sorrowful times, they buried their dead below the floors of their homes. The relics from this era, which are primarily located in what would eventually become the palace central court, show that religious ceremonies kept happening during this time. Widening across the future palace site and surrounding hills, Knossos became a village with probably several hundred inhabitants during the early Neolithic period. The houses were square and had 1 or 2 rooms with walls made of mud bricks resting on stone slabs. The main rooms were covered by flat roofs made of branches covered in mud. During the Middle Neolithic period, during the 4th millennium BC, there was a larger settlement, maybe up to 1,000 people living in private, family-owned homes. The construction was similar to that of the early Neolithic, but it had raised hearths, timbered windows and doors, and other raised elements like cabinets and pilasters. The Great House, a 100-meter square stone building beneath the palace, suggested a predecessor of the luxurious residences of the future, indicating the possibility of communal or public use. During the late Neolithic period, Knossos saw notable population growth during the late or final Neolithic period, during the 4th millennium BC. At almost 100 meters above the sea level, the site developed into a center of agricultural and cultural activity. Sadly, a significant part of the Neolithic Knossos remains unknown, hidden beneath the buildings built by the Bronze Age residents. Beginning in the late 4th millennium BC, Knossos experienced advancement in technology when its people discovered how to combine tin and copper, resulting in the creation of strong bronze tools and weapons. This period stood out as an introduction to the heights that would come later through ceremonial activities, as demonstrated by drinking cups that were specially crafted and decorated. At the end of the 3rd millennium BC, Knossos experienced the construction of the first major structures. The nature and shape of these structures are still unclear, but this indicated an important turning point in Knossos history and the beginning of the notable architectural achievements that would eventually come to define its historical importance. Around 2000 BC, the Grecian palaces began to rise. The first Grecian palaces, such as Knossos, Malia, Phaistos, and Zakros, appeared in the early Middle Minoan period around 2000 BC, marking an important shift from the Neolithic village system that had preceded it. These palaces, which provided organizational models for Crete and Greece in the succeeding millennium, announced the beginning of a period of greater wealth and centralized power in both politics and religion. The Grecian palaces, probably influenced by some Eastern models, developed into amazing buildings and centers of society. Few centuries later, Knossos became the center of the Old Palace period, which started at the beginning of the 2nd millennium BC. This early form of Knossos Palace could be identified by two features: the central court, which was squared off and paved, and the west facade of the palace, which had a long, monumental cut ashlar stone. This court, which is today a performance area, represented the ceremonial and social center of the palace. During the Old Palace period in Knossos, major infrastructure was built, particularly the Royal Road, a wide paved road that connected Knossos to the nearby town to the west. Moving around within the palace complex was further supported by a complex entrance system made up of raised walkways. Old Palace Knossos functioned as a center for the manufacture of completed goods, in addition to being a storehouse for raw materials. Evidence of weaving, sealstone carving, and pottery also appeared, suggesting that Knossos was a center of production and handcrafted activities. A written script that was developed specifically for this constantly changing environment was called Grecian hieroglyphics. Records of this earliest written language were clay tablets and nodules, with this script mounted on cargo containers. The language written in Grecian hieroglyphics is still not translated and remains a linguistic mystery. The glory that would emerge in later Minoan eras was made possible by the Old Palace period at Knossos. The organizational system of this era, its innovative architecture and thriving society led to even more memorable achievements in the following centuries. The New Palace period, which began around 1700 BC, represented the height of Minoan glory. Major repairs, probably caused by a disastrous accident, made the palace an amazing structure that would last for centuries. Beginning around 1700 BC, the New Palace period at Knossos was defined by substantial renovations. These necessary repairs brought unique features that would define Knossos' identity. Paving the west court allowed the proto-palatial colors to be used for public ceremonies once again. To amaze and astound guests, the monumental south propylaeum, a southern entrance, was added. During this time, many other valuable architectural structures were built, like the throne room. The new areas were decorated with innovative elements such as colonnaded staircases, light walls, piers, and door partitions. The New Palace era was a time of great artistic prosperity. The partridge and bluebird frescoes are two examples of how natural world scenes were portrayed in frescoes. The grandstand fresco, which pointed out group performances in the West Court, reconstructed and decorated with relief wall painting of a raging bull, and the north entrance passage appear to symbolize Knossos and Minoan Civilization. There were also major changes in writing during this time. Linear A, a new script, appeared alongside Grecian hieroglyphics. Linear A was used for accounting and administration, tracking the movement of goods and people throughout the palace and the island. The most prosperous Minoan period took place during the middle of the 2nd millennium BC. Several of the palaces on the island of Crete, like the one in Knossos, had spacious central courtyards where ceremonial events were possibly held in public. These courts were surrounded by residences, warehouses, and workshops that served as thriving centers of business and culture. Standing over 20,000 square meters wide and standing out by a massive staircase that led to state rooms on the upper level, the Palace of Knossos was the largest in size. During this time, Minoan fresco painting reached out its highest point, illustrating scenes of dancing, sports, and animals in a realistic manner. During the 16th century BC, Minoan influence spread to mainland Greece, opening the doors for the rise of Mycenaean culture. Starting from the 15th century BC, Knossos Palace entered the final Palatial period, also referred as the post-Palatial period. Palaces at Malea, Phaistos, and Zakros were among the many Minoan sites throughout Crete that were heavily destroyed or abandoned during this time. Knossos was rebuilt despite these devastations, but with considerable modifications. Knossos was the only palace still standing in Crete when the palaces at Malea, Phaistos, and Zakros were destroyed around the middle of 15th century BC. The Mycenaean trends affected pottery and architecture, which suggests influences from the mainland. In order to modify the flow of traffic, and possibly for security reasons, the new interior walls were built in palace, like the west magazines, which are storage areas. The throne room was redesigned. Knossos appears to have been influenced by the mainland population during this last phase. During this post-palatial era, a significant part of the palace interior was painted over, including several of the most well-known wall paintings from Knossos, such as the Procession and the Camp Stool fresco. The pottery produced at post-palatial Knossos was inspired by neo-palatial predecessors, but featured an unusual style that made individuals appear more like structures than realistic human figures. Some new forms of pottery were developed with obvious influences from the Mycenaean mainland. As evidenced by the hundreds of clay tablets found there, post-palatial Knossos was still a site of highly advanced administration. However, the Linear A script ended up being abandoned in favor of the Linear B script. The Knossos Palace was destroyed around 1350 BC and never rebuilt. A fire decimated the building, causing the upper stories to collapse completely. Although the town of Knossos experienced a period of revival around 1200 BC and portions of the palace might have been used, the structure and the institutions connected to it were never rebuilt to its former glory. The legends of the early city of Knossos state that Daedalus, an Athenian inventor, mathematician, and architect, was hired by King Minos to create his palace. No one who entered could find their way out because the palace was so ingeniously designed. The famous labyrinth was built to house the famous Minotaur, half man and half bull. This is the well-known story about the labyrinth and the Minotaur, the beast that lived thanks to human sacrifice. The hero Theseus sailed to Crete and was forced to battle the Minotaur. Ariadne, Minos' daughter, gave him a ball of thread before he entered the labyrinth, which he unwound as he entered it so he could follow it to find his way out. He killed the Minotaur, freed the children, and victoriously returned to his hometown with the helping hand of Ariadne. The legend describes King Minos residing in a palace at Knossos. He instructed Daedalus to build a labyrinth, a massive maze, so that he could keep his son, the Minotaur. Minos imprisoned Daedalus and his son, Icarus, in a high tower at Knossos to prevent them from disclosing the secrets of the palace. However, Daedalus fashioned wax and feathers from birds as they managed to get out of jail, but Icarus lost his wings from flying too close to the sun and died. After Theseus killed the Minotaur, he and Ariadne left Crete to avoid her vengeful father. There is no hard evidence to support the legend's claim about the location of the famous labyrinth, as there is no sufficient evidence to prove that any kind of labyrinth was ever built in the Knossos Palace. In order to resolve this thousands-years-old mystery, archaeologists were excavating various locations throughout the island of Crete, Knossos Palace included, but there are still many different theories and the evidence is contradictory. Arthur Evans had a theory that the word labyrinth originated from the word labris, axe or double axe. According to Plutarch, labris was a Lydian word for double axe. Throughout the Mycenaean world, the double axe sign obviously had important symbolic meaning. Numerous stones within the palace had scratches caused by axes. It is a motif found in a pottery decoration and is associated with numerous shrines located throughout Crete, including the palace's shrine of the double axes. However, it is still not possible to formulate a plausible explanation that unifies all the evidence we have. Many other legends and works of literature from the later period feature Knossos. According to Herodotus, Minos was the legendary king of Knossos, founded the Thalassocracy, or Sea Empire. Thucydides added that Minos colonized numerous Aegean islands, increased trade, and pushed off pirates from the sea. Although we might never find the answers to all the contradictions and mysteries of the Minoan civilization, it is clear that centuries after Knossos' golden age came to an end, the ancient Greeks were still intrigued by Crete, its history, and its legends. In addition to being a magnificent Bronze Age palace, Knossos was a city that persevered through many difficulties and changes over the ages. Knossos continued to play a significant role in the Mediterranean trade, culture, and power dynamics even after the Minoan civilization collapsed. Numerous civilizations, including the Egyptians, Greeks and Romans, were impacted by it. Knossos was a creative and diverse place where many architectural, artistic and religious traditions coexisted and interacted. During the Roman period, on the site of the old palace, the Roman colonists constructed their own buildings, combining some Minoan materials and designs. Additionally, they produced coins featuring the mythical Knossos symbols like the labyrinth and the Minotaur. These coins demonstrate both the Roman admiration and appropriation of the Minoan heritage. Before a sizable Christian church was constructed on the site's northern boundary during the Byzantine era, Knossos was still inhabited and utilized for religious purposes. But eventually, these people relocated to Chandax, a nearby town that grew to become Heraklion, the current capital of Crete. Before being rediscovered and excavated by Arthur Evans in the early 20th century, the ancient history of Knossos was left forgotten. In addition to reconstructing some of the structures and murals, Evan and his team also discovered the remnants of the Roman colony and the Minoan Palace. Arthur Evans also gave the name Minoan after the legendary king Minos to the civilization that constructed the palace. Evans' interpretation of Knossos has shaped people's perceptions on the Minoan civilization, but it also led to many false conclusions. For this reason, research into the ancient history of Knossos is still more than necessary, and outdated theories should be challenged by fresh findings and viewpoints.